Greetings, citizens, and welcome to Unknown. I'm Jason McClellan, and we have a roundtable prepared for you tonight. We're doing a special live recording of Unknown. We are live right now on Facebook Live. We are recording this on Sunday, April 29th. So we look forward to having people join us. We'll get to some questions at the end of the show. But let me go ahead and introduce to you our panel, because we do have a panel, a roundtable discussion tonight. And I'm excited to have everybody here. So first, Maureen Elsberry. Maureen Elsberry from Rogue Planet is with us. Ryan Sprague, everybody here. This is a Rogue Planet reunion, really. Ryan Sprague, Somewhere in the Skies, Rogue Planet, and Shane Hurd. Shane Hurd is a new member of our squad at Rogue Planet. So welcome, Shane. Welcome everybody to our fun roundtable.
Thanks for having us.
Glad to be here.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, the topic of our discussion tonight is MUFON, and that's a very broad topic. And for those of you who don't know what MUFON is the Mutual UFO Network, really the largest current UFO organization. They are an organization, a nonprofit organization that exists to study and explore UFO and UFO-related phenomena. And depending on who you talk to and depending on when they choose to list this in their objectives, a scientific approach to the study of UFOs. And in recent years, and certainly in the past 2 years, there's been a lot of negative press about MUFON and a lot of sort of trouble from within. And we're going to talk about some of those things tonight and also get into really looking at and exploring if MUFON is even relevant in 2018 and where it sort of sits in modern day UFO research. So I'm really excited to dive into some of this stuff. So let's lay some of the groundwork first. And Ryan, I'd love for you to jump in here and help me, because it was sort of fortuitous and a happy coincidence that today, April 29th, Newsweek published an article on this very topic, talking about some of the problems with MUFON. And this really stems from one individual and comments he made back in 2017. So Ryan, if you want to set that up for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it was about a month ago when I interviewed Dr. Chris Cogswell, who became the new director of research for MUFON. Really awesome guy, on the younger side, actually has a PhD and was really excited to start working for MUFON and bring that scientific approach that MUFON always says that is a part of their mission, bring that to the forefront. And Chris had all these amazing ideas of what to do and to peer review everything, all the reports that came in, and get a core group of academics and historians and scientists to come together and really shake things up at MUFON. So I was excited. I was back on the MUFON, board. I was ready to be a fanboy again. And then a couple months later, I found out that Chris resigned out of the blue. And we came to find out that this was because of what had happened. What was it? Maybe 6 months prior with the event with one of the state directors of MUFON, a Facebook post that he made, a very controversial, racist post, as it were. And like you said, Jason, it was very fortuitous that today a article came out in Newsweek where Chris was featured. Former state directors of MUFON were featured. The executive director and the person in question were all featured in this article about the event that had happened and how it was handled by MUFON, the organization. So, how I got involved, I was contacted by the gentleman who wrote the Newsweek article just for my thoughts on racism within the UFO community, within the the field, as it were, and I gave some of my thoughts. But I was actually more excited to hear that they had talked to actual MUFON members about this and their thoughts on it. So that's kind of the whole snowball effect that this entire event had. I don't know if you want me to be specific about what was said by this gentleman, but I'm sure we'll get into that. So, yeah.
Well, since that's sort of, what really spawned a lot of the attention and some of the main issues that have come up, and certainly was the focus of the Newsweek article. Yeah, why don't you go ahead and go into that a little bit?
Yeah, so I mean, the person in question, I mean, we can name him at this point. This was John Venture. He was a state director for MUFON, Pennsylvania. Made a very controversial post on his personal Facebook page that is worth mentioning here about white genocide, something the alt-right, the far right likes to use to their advantage in their rhetoric, and it really took a lot of people by surprise. I mean, I never had seen him say anything like this before, but it really took a lot of people by surprise, and it started getting shared, and a lot of people were really offended. And, you know, everyone started saying, okay, what are they going to do about this? They got to fire the dude. They got to get rid of him. Any institution or organization, I think, would do that if they saw that one of their members was posting disgusting, revolting things like this. And that's not exactly how it was handled by the organization. So I think that's where the real problem stemmed, is the racist rant aside, it's how it was handled and dealt with. And very little, I guess, you know, punishment was done in terms of this. So yeah, it's convoluted, it's messy, as these things often are, but this Newsweek article, I think, has really shed a good light on it, and this is the consequence of what happens when you don't deal with it. It starts going to the mainstream press, and I think this isn't the last we're going to see of it, for sure.
Well, and yeah, the title of this article is called, it says, "What if aliens met racists? MUFON resignations highlight internal divisions in UFO sighting organization." Yeah, I mean, that's not good press.
That is not good press. When they say all press is good press, this certainly isn't the case. I mean, we've seen so many resignations within MUFON in the past, God, you know, since this happened. Major people who've been with the organization for decades and decades. And it isn't just this one incident. I'd like to add that as well. I mean, this has been a problem within the organization for a while. Not only racism, but, you know, misogyny, sexism. All these things have come up in what's often considered a boys' club. So I'm happy these things are getting out there and exposed. It's extremely sad and disheartening, but if it's not exposed, then it's never going to change. So that's kind of where I left it with the article that came out today.
Well, and to be fair, we'll read John Ventry's comment, because he was quick to comment on the Newsweek article. And he posted, "Sensationalizing old news seems desperate and vindictive to me. I only responded one time to a potential hate crime and later apologized. This is free speech. My post was on my personal page and not on my MUFON Pennsylvania page because it had nothing to do with UFOs. There is a very vindictive agenda here. I'm glad I'm above all that, which I've demonstrated for years through my charitable giving and volunteerism to many local charities. You should judge someone by what they do, not what they say. One time in anger, shame on you." And certainly a lot of Ventry supporters have gone on and you know, have voiced their support for John, and saying that in their interaction with John, they've never seen him be anything but wonderful. And, you know, John's a very charming guy. I mean, I was on Hangar 1 with John, you know, and that really, you know, people need to, I think, not be quick to dismiss things just because you've met somebody and they seem nice. I mean, you have to kind of take everything they do. So, you know, John's comment about you have to judge people by what they do, what you say is kind of, you know, what you do. That's part of what you do.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think, sorry, Maureen, the whole idea of, you know, free speech, this is something that Venture had been touting, was, you know, it's my Facebook page, I have free speech, but we all know free speech comes with consequences, and I think that's kind of where we're at right now. So that's all I wanted to add to that, Jason.
Well, here's something
especially when you're a public figure. I mean,
yes.
I'm just saying, especially when you're a public figure, you have to take it action, take account for what you're saying, because people are looking up to you who are in different positions. And if you're, kind of spewing this kind of stuff, it doesn't matter if it's on your personal page, you're accountable for what you say. And he, instead of doing that, was very dismissive and defensive of what he's trying to say, and try to make it off like it wasn't a big deal. But it was. I mean, I immediately unfriended him because personally, I don't want to see that people saying that kind of stuff. Horrible. And it's rampant in this industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, looking at MUFON as a whole, we talked about some issues and some problems that the organization has had over the years, simply because, in my opinion, certainly, it is a large organization. I mean, it's a huge national organization, but it's also international, and it's largely volunteer-based. And you've got, chapter after chapter after chapter all around the country, run by different people, different individuals. And there's really not, and, blame it on lack of resources or whatever, but there really is a lack of sort of central organization and central control. So you'll have one chapter of this scientific-based organization, very focused in all of their meetings and what they're telling people on things that are not at all based in science, are very focused on a lot of crystal healing and, sort of the new agey type stuff, or, just a lot of what's really considered the far fringes of UFO research. And then you have some chapters that are very focused on the science, on the investigation, and doing some fantastic work. And Shane, I'd love to bring you in the conversation because you are a member of MUFON and an investigator here at Phoenix MUFON. So I'd love to get your thoughts on your experience with MUFON, and certainly your what you've thought of being part of MUFON so far.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jason. And yeah, full disclosure, I'm not only a member, but I am a field investigator. Have been so for about a year. I'm in the Phoenix branch. I happen to believe it is one of the better branches, very focused and scientific oriented. And my experience has been nothing but positive. All of the people, leadership, fellow investigators, very heads-up people, focused. We don't really go down the path of what we call the woo-woo kind of stuff. We try and stick to the facts. And of course, I don't claim to be a scientist by any means, but an investigator and somebody who collects facts and data and compiles that in a way that it can be used by scientists. So, and then the other thing I guess I could say as well is that there is sort of a differentiation between the local chapters and the national. So I've only had a little experience on a national basis, mainly through the symposiums or training bulletins, that kind of thing. And also I did have the privilege of being associated with Chris earlier, right before he resigned, and was going to participate in some really cool projects. So that was really disappointing, but completely respect his decision to part ways. When you act on conscience, you can't criticize anyone for that at all.
And Ryan, you recently interviewed Chris, and isn't he, now that he's resigned, isn't he going to be starting his own organization?
Yes, he's starting a coalition. I think this is great because, again, he was really going to change things for MUFON. I honestly believe that. Now, that's not to say that I don't think MUFON is going to continue to do great work. Like Shane said, I have so many colleagues and good friends who are still state directors and researchers for MUFON, and that's amazing. They're all doing, like Shane said, their own work in their own branches, and that's great. The real problem stems with the higher-ups, I believe. And I think that's what Chris really recognized and realized, that he wasn't being told the truth about how this incident was handled. So he got out. Why waste your time with an organization that can't be fully transparent and truthful with you? So Chris wanted to keep doing the work. He knew a lot of people were counting on him, myself included, to really bring that scientific approach back to ufology. And so, yeah, as far as I know, he's working on getting a group of scientists, academics, researchers, historians, psychologists, everything you could think of that somehow is intrinsically linked to the UFO topic, study, phenomenon. Get them all together, peer review everything, and make their own educated reports. Not so much conclusions, but yeah, it sounds really exciting. It sounds a lot more heavy hitting than I think a lot of the MUFON reports often are, and I'm excited. I'm excited to see where it goes. Hopefully someday they can share information with one another, whatever Chris ends up doing and MUFON, and we can get past all this. Again, I think this needs to be the press that MUFON gets right now, or else it's gonna keep happening. So I wish Chris the best of luck with his organization, and I still wish MUFON the best. But yeah, I'm excited to see what Chris does, for sure.
So, there have been a lot of people in recent years, and certainly since the sort of exodus from MUFON by a lot of people and a lot of the leadership, people starting their own groups. They're going it alone. Erica Lukes is certainly one of those people. Even Leslie Kean, is joined groups to go it alone and focus on specific aspects of scientific research when it comes to UFOs. So my question to our table here is, certainly it's got to be extremely challenging, when you're going from a large organization like MUFON to a small team of, 2 or 3 or 4 people. Your resources are fewer. MUFON has this huge network of investigators. That's a valuable resource and something that no one else, frankly, can match. So what do you guys see as being the biggest challenges to people trying to start their own organization focused on UFOs from scratch?
So I think that a big problem, again, like you said, is resources, limited resources and money. And people that are starting their own organizations are often not able to come up with enough funds to buy all the necessary equipment or, things they need to actually be able to do scientific investigations. And the problem, too, is, MUFON worked really hard. I'm sure we'll get into the Bigelow stuff later with where the money came from for the Rapid Response Team, STAR. And a lot of UFO investigations, obviously, timing is critical. And if you have the problem where you have a very small organization located in not very many spots, and you have an amazing case happen that you're not able to get there right away, you could miss crucial, bits of evidence that would really highlight the case. And I think that all these little small groups working separately, that's where an issue comes in, where you're divided and it's harder to collect as much information. And it may thin out water the information down in terms of collecting a bigger database of info. But again, the problem arises with a monopoly organization as well, where you have to be a certain part of a certain organization in order to access information and have this come out. So, even Jason and I talked about in the past starting a self-organization to get more young people in, because MUFON tends to be older male dominated, and we wanted to try to do something different. But then we said, there's just too many groups starting up. This doesn't make sense. So we're not going to do it. And we didn't have the funds or resources to create something that would be viable to actually make a difference anyway. So.
And we're not saying you're old, Shane. You're not old.
No.
Nah, not at Hurd anyway.
Not at all, man. Whenever I see you posting photos with grandkids, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. What?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they keep me young.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, too. When you look at MUFON, obviously, before I joined, I had been, researching UFOs on my own for quite some period of time. But then it got to the point where I'm like, well, I don't want to just consume the information. I want to play. I want to participate. And for me, MUFON made sense in that it was a structured organization, and whatever effort presumably you put forth, could accomplish something. And so I think, an organization like MUFON can and should exist from the standpoint, it's almost like infrastructure for a country. You have highways and an electrical grid, and you have water and sewer systems, and these things make it possible for that society to operate. Well, really, if ufology is a society, MUFON is kind of like that infrastructure. It's a place where this information can be collected in an organized way. It can be, aggregated and categorized, and it can be processed in a way that then it can be scientifically studied. So, and then made available for people to see the results. So from that perspective, I think the premise is great. The problem is just like any organization, it's made up of people, and people make mistakes, and you're going to have positives and you're going to have negatives, and so you just want to make sure, I think, in my point of view, why I haven't really resigned or anything at this point is, the positives are still outweighing the negatives, so I'm still going to participate, and I'm hoping in time that MUFON leadership will make the right decision. Obviously, what's happened is completely unacceptable in this day and age. There's no place for racism. As far as I'm concerned, there's only one race, the human race. Why are we treating each other in any other way is unbelievable. So that thinking is out there, and it's common, and that's a sad thing. But bringing issues up in this way, like we are, like that Newsweek article, I mean, those are the things that are going to help correct that. I think something you said was really good earlier, Ryan, was that, or maybe Maureen, was that when somebody acts in a certain way, they should be held accountable and responsible for those actions, and that's really what we're looking at here is, a person, an individual that's done this, reflects badly on so many, sadly, but, that's what needs to be corrected is, that situation.
So that being said, I guess you already answered the question, but do you guys feel that there's hope for MUFON? Can MUFON get back on track and become the organization that we all want it to be?
I feel like that question's been asked so many times throughout the decades. But Jason, that's a really good question. I've seen so many people saying, "Oh, this is the nail in the coffin. Like, this is it. Once this incident goes mainstream, like, they're done." But we all know that's not going to be the case. Hopefully, there will be an overhaul within the board of directors and whatnot to deal with situations like this. Maybe there will be a stricter protocol or new things implemented, which is all like. I'm not a member. That's all I would want if I was a part of the organization, is like some sort of protocol for situations like this. I mean, the executive director was deleting comments from people criticizing what happened. I mean, that's just not a way to handle something like this. So again, I think Jen Harzen has done some really amazing things for the organization. This was not one of them. But I think he's done a lot for the organization, and I hope that they can move past this. And like Shane said, there's so many hardworking investigators out there using their own resources and their own money to do these investigations. So I think we have to keep that in mind. There are hundreds and hundreds of individuals who are not racists, who are not bigots, who are not sexist within the organization. And that's what we need. Again, like, you don't want a racist investigator going out and investigating something with such a vulnerable witness who may not happen to be the same ethnicity as they are or gender as they are. So maybe some sort of vetting would be a good way to go in terms of that. I don't know what that would look like in terms of a protocol, but I think if MUFON sticks with their mission of being a scientific organization to benefit humanity and educate humanity, that's where we have to get back to. So yeah, I do think MUFON is going to keep going, and I think they're going to do some incredible things, but this is kind of a dark time, and when you're in those darkest moments, I think that's when you really have to look at what's going on and reflect on it and move forward. So again, that's my opinion.
Yeah, I definitely think they need some new blood injected as well into the organization, different viewpoints. And again, it's kind of a money issue where it's a nonprofit organization. The funding's got to come from somewhere. And some of these people who maybe are not as good for the organization as we would like are offering up the greenbacks. And that's where it's really hard for probably the leadership to determine what to do and how to handle it best, because they're worried about losing those funds as well. Sure, it's a tricky nonprofit world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I would like to point out for people listening and think that this sounds all doom and gloom, talking about MUFON and how it drags us all down and makes UFO research look bad. We find it's very common in the UFO field for, people to worry about the reputation of UFOs or the reputation of ufology. And I always try to tell people, you don't need to worry about it. Like, it's always going to be there. It is what it is. If the evidence is as strong as we all believe it is, it's going to be just fine. Things are going to come and go. Bad news is going to happen. Bad eggs are going to happen. But just keep doing what you're doing and don't worry about that. We feel the need to belong and be part of groups and things. So, I understand, how it benefits UFO research to have groups, to be part of groups, because they provide, the support, the resources, the other things that you need to further your personal investigation and research. But, and those are all great things, but you don't need to be part of a group. You don't need to have the approval of some larger, real or invisible or pretend community to further your own research, to do what you're doing within the UFO search. So I applaud all the people who are in MUFON, who are starting their own organizations, but you don't need to do that. It's okay. You can go it alone. That's what I do.
It's a good point, though, man. Yeah, I mean, everyone, the exopolitics movement are looking for disclosure. This big grand disclosure that the government's going to reveal the ET presence. And for the people we've all spoken to who've had sightings or an experience of some sort, that is their personal disclosure. And I think that's the most important thing. Like, disclosure has happened, and it happens one person at a time, and it happens in whatever way you see fit as the individual having the sighting. So I think you're right. I don't think we need these huge, logos or symbols of MUFON or NICAP or what have you. Like, just do your own thing. Do it underground. Do your own research, and come to your own personal conclusions. Like, why let someone else tell you what you saw when you know what you saw? And
it's awesome when you find like-minded people, absolutely. And we all like to be with people who are like us, who have the same likes and same ideas and things like that. That's all great. But, at the same time, especially when it comes to the strange, we're all different. We have our own ideas, our own personal experiences, our own, thoughts and speculation about what certain things mean or what we believe is out there, or believe is the cause of this, or, we're all different. We don't agree. I mean, I would think that very few of us within the UFO field, believe 100% the same as anybody else. We are individuals. We have our individual thoughts and ideas about this very strange topic. So, people need to keep that in mind. We always say UFOs is not a religion, even though it kind of is, because it's based on belief. It shouldn't be treated like a religion. You don't need to believe everything that certain people tell you. Think for yourself, do your own research, make up your own ideas. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, and I think another point directly related to that, Jason, is we see this all the time as researchers and investigators. If you're reporting on something like, there might be a possible microbial life form found on this area, or however the basis, the people that get mad at you for reporting on small things that are relevant to the big picture because they believe that UFOs are already here and extraterrestrial life is already here. Why are we bothering? What does it matter if a NASA scientist says something is out there? And I think they're all little pieces to the bigger picture, and each person has their own opinion and does their own research. It doesn't mean that one aspect of the phenomenon is less important than another. And I think the more people understand that, the more we can move in a cohesive fashion forward to finding out, this big mystery.
Yeah, and when you think of it too, ufology, it's like almost like a buffet, right? You have disclosure, you have consciousness, you have the nuts and bolts stuff, all of those things, and really it's too large and broad to take all of that on your own anyway. People have an interest in a particular area, then research that area, investigate it, and be satisfied and interested in that. There's room for everybody, varying opinions, varying interests. But the point is if you're interested, is do something about it, do something with it.
Yeah, I love that.
Being proactive, absolutely.
Well, I guess we'll conclude our MUFON discussion for tonight by, I'll just say, I still have hope for the organization. I really do, because I see its huge benefit, potential benefit, and the great that it already has done and continues to do. Needs to get on track. It needs to do a little structural reorganizing and put some proper procedures in place. But I'm optimistic that MUFON will continue down a better path. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, but I hope recent media attention is going to give that push in the right direction. I'm with you, Ryan. I think that's what's going to come from this.
A nice code of conduct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, code of conduct. You would think, right?
Good place to start.
So I'm going to segue now into something that we can conclude on, and I just wanted to talk about this with you guys because another recent thing that happened, and that was ancient aliens. That's still a thing. I'm not a fan of ancient aliens. I never really have been, and I talk about organizations and groups and people within our field who do things that are do more harm than good. I think ancient aliens is in the basket of doing harm. But that aside, for those who didn't watch, and I didn't watch, but there's certainly been plenty written about it already. The new episode featured a nice recap of a lot of the big news that's been happening in the UFO world, just this past year, and a lot of that obviously focusing on the Pentagon's UFO program, on To the Stars Academy of Arts and Science, on Robert Bigelow, and that's all great and fun, and I see a lot of people in the UFO community very excited that was all on TV, but number one, it's all old stuff. We already know that. Sure, the general public doesn't. It's nice to put that in front of their faces. That's all good. But it was really just taking previously released material and putting it on their show for content. And did they run out of history? Like, the show is Ancient Aliens. I'm sorry. Is 2017 ancient? I mean, we do have a very fast news cycle now, and things go by really fast, but really, Ancient Aliens is going to spend most of their episode talking about things that happened just in recent years? That's kind of pathetic. Sorry, that was my rant.
No, I did watch it. I watched this, guys, and yeah, it was slick. It was very informational for those not in the know who may not have seen the Pentagon story. Or, I mean, here's the thing with the Pentagon story. Like, it was huge, and we all were pretty excited when it first came out, and maybe within 2 weeks, just gone. Mm-hmm. And no one was talking about it, except for, shows like ours and more niche communities. But, we're hoping that'll be a snowball effect. The Washington Post might do a story. Politico might do a story. Newsweek might do a story, albeit about racism. But that aside, it was an overview of everything that happened with To the Stars, Pentagon. They got Podesta to be interviewed on this, which was interesting, to say the least. But yeah, absolutely no new information, no bombshells. And like you said, Jason, Ancient Aliens wasn't mentioned once in the entire thing. So I understand, like, you know, if they're a show about UFOs, about aliens, like, why not cover recent events? But there was no tying it back to anything, nothing like that. So while it was interesting, I watched it with my girlfriend's family, and they weren't really up with what was going on with all that, so it was cool for them. But again, like, it's the filtered version of this information through a major, you know, cable television show on their umpteenth season, so you're getting their angle of it. And the only thing I can say is Giorgio's hair has gotten smaller, so that we're headed in the right direction that way. So I'll leave it at that.
Well, his hairline doesn't agree. It's going the wrong direction.
Okay, so it's more of a this sort of situation. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie, I saw a 2-hour runtime and I have not had time for that. So I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah. I actually saw it, and you know, I thought they did a good job, like you said, as an overview. But my problem with it was that it was so in the model of typical ancient aliens that it didn't stand out. It didn't really make the impact because, you know, they're slick, they have good, you know, good production value and all these things, and it just had that same sort of feel that everything else has, and it just didn't stand out to me as important as it probably should have been, because it just kind of lulled you into that ancient aliens kind of feel, and that was it. But they did a good job recapping. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, Shane, one thing I wanted to add too, that's a good point, that they had Stephen Bassett on, guys, and as we know, he touts the ET presence on Earth very heavily. So when they interviewed him, it was, you know, the special was about the cover-up, that the government is keeping this information from us. They showed the mock congressional hearings that Bassett put on. The problem with that is Bassett is touting that ETs are already here. And again, this is mainstream television where most of the public is not aware of that. And I know this is Ancient Aliens thing. ETs have been here. They've influenced everything. But you are talking to an audience who doesn't necessarily believe that. And here they are saying, you know, the government's covering this up. That I can believe, you know, that they're keeping things secret. The Pentagon program, for one. But the fact that he's saying, you're an idiot if you don't believe that ETs have already been here, that's kind of what was happening. And that's where I kind of was like, no. Like, this could have been handled so much more better. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and
Television for you.
And back to my original comment about this being ancient aliens in an odd place for history to, you know, include that recent news. It's just weird. I mean, as people, all of us have, you know, been on UFO programs and are contacted to be on UFO programs all the time, but, you know, that doesn't fare well for us and for other UFO programs if there's already so little UFO content out there that ancient aliens is going into current events.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah. They got to do the Breaking Bad model, know when to stop.
Yeah, that's right. Stop taking our work.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, don't jump the shark.
Well, yeah, exactly. All right, well, I want to thank my roundtable, all my friends, for taking part in this discussion tonight. I think, you know, I wanted to keep it light. There's a lot of heavy things to talk about with MUFON, and a lot of, you know, people from within MUFON and, you know, in leadership roles and people who were in leadership roles and have since left, that can really add to this conversation. And it's certainly one that we will revisit throughout the year because, you know, again, brought on possibly by this Newsweek article, I think there's going to be a lot of change happening within the organization, and hopefully for the better. But yeah, we'll try to talk to people personally involved in that as it develops. So Ryan, Maureen, Shane, thank you so much for hanging out. This was fun. You know, a new thing for us to do live with video. Still have a couple bugs to work out, but I like this. So if you guys think it works all right, we'll try it again sometime.
Absolutely.
Maybe with alcohol too. That's always fun.
Always better.
I know. I feel
now you're
lacking
talking
without a drink.
Yes, I know. It's weird, right? All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening and watching. If you watch this live with us, check out our website, rogueplanet.tv. That's where all of our strange content is. And Unknown is always available on iTunes and everywhere else. Check out Ryan's show, Somewhere in the Skies. And guys, thanks so much. We'll see you later.